What's up, Collide? Let me ask you something real quick. Have you ever been stuck in between something? Like you're not where you started, but you're also not yet where you're trying to go. I almost died a few years ago stuck in between two things. And I wish I was being dramatic, but I'm not. So let me tell you the story. I planned to hike Whiteface Mountain in the middle of winter with a friend. But what me and my friend didn't account for was the weather. It was so cold. In fact, so cold that our water bottles completely froze shut after about a mile. We also didn't realize how deep the snow was going to be, and with no snowshoes, we fell through all the way up to our waist every single step for miles. As you can imagine, doing that for 5 miles all the way up to the top of a mountain became exhausting. We started the hike at 3 o'clock in the morning, and we were hoping to make it there by sunrise. So when the sun, finally started to rise and we saw it hit the top of the mountain, we got so excited, we started to run all the way up to try to get to the top as fast as possible. And I outran my friend. I made it to the top first, and it was beautiful. Incredible views in every direction. But at the same time that I noticed the beauty, I also noticed I didn't feel so good. I was so tired, I could barely move my legs. And I started to feel so sleepy that my vision started to shrink down until it looked like I was looking out of 2 little tiny pinholes. I also had an intense pain in my chest, and my heart was beating so heavy and so fast. And so I decided to lay down and take a rest. Which, by the way, if you didn't know this, that is a huge red flag. If I fell asleep up there, I would definitely have froze to death. In that moment, I was stuck in between. I just hiked up 5 miles, and I didn't think there was any way I was gonna make it back down. That moment felt like forever. Maybe you've never been on a frozen mountain in 0-degree weather, but you've probably felt like you're stuck before. Really, we're all in between. Sometimes physically, like on a mountain or on a road trip. Sometimes it's emotionally. It could be, you're feeling in between childhood and adulthood, or in between doubt and belief, in between fear and courage, in between who we were and who we're becoming. And here's the thing, this in between, it can be so messy, confusing, frustrating, and even awkward sometimes. It just sometimes wants to make me give up, just like I wanted to give up on that mountain. But guess what? The in-between is exactly where Jesus meets us. Hebrews 7:25 says that Jesus lives forever to intercede with God on our behalf, which basically means Jesus is in your corner. He talks to God for us. And right now, Jesus is doing that. Not just in your before or your after, Jesus is in the middle. He's in the messy, the unknown, the pain. And Jesus is your high priest. He's standing in the gap between you and God. You might be thinking, what is a high priest? Let me break it down for you. In the Old Testament, there were high priests. Their job was to go into this super sacred space called the Holy of Holies. And they went in there to offer sacrifices for people's sins, but they had to get behind this huge, heavy curtain. And it had to happen over and over again. Why? Because sin kept happening over and over again. Sin kept getting in the way. There was always something in between us and God. But then Jesus stepped in. When Jesus died, something huge happened. The curtain in the temple, the one that was separating us from God's presence, that curtain tore in half from the top to the bottom. But why does that matter? Let me tell you. Because Jesus removed the thing that was in between us and God. And now we can approach God with confidence. We don't have to be afraid. We don't have to be perfect. We just have to come to God. Jesus is constant in the in-between. He doesn't dip out when life gets complicated. He doesn't wait for us to get it all together. He meets us right where we are. And maybe right now you are living in your own in-between. In between anxiety and peace. In between who you thought you were and who God says you are. Maybe God is challenging you that if you're gonna really follow Him, you need to change something about your life. Can I just say this? You are not alone in the in-between. Jesus is right there with you. So, what do we do when we're in the in-between? Well, we gotta look at what Hebrews 12, 1-2 says, and you can read it with me. It says, therefore, since we're surrounded by such a huge crowd of witnesses to the life of faith, let us strip off every weight that slows us down, especially the sin that so easily trips us up, and let us run with endurance the race that God has set before us. And then it says this, we do this by keeping our eyes on Jesus, the champion, who initiates and perfects our faith. because of the joy awaiting him, he endured the cross, disregarded its shame, and now he's sitting in the place of honor beside God's throne. That's what we do when we're in between. We keep going. We fix our eyes on the one who's already gone before us. That's Jesus, by the way. He's the one who knows the in-between, and he overcame it. And yeah, it's not always going to be easy, but every step of faith in the in-between matters. Every moment of trust, every prayer that you say, every tear that you cry, it all counts because Jesus is still interceding. He's still holding you together. He's still being constant yesterday, today, and forever, like it says in Hebrews 13. So think back to me on that mountain. I was exhausted, I was passing out, and I was out of energy. But remember, I told you that I hiked with a friend. Well, that friend's name is Gage. Gage found me at the top of that mountain, laying on my side on a bench, almost asleep, with the wind whistling over my head and the snow dusting up all around us. And he grabbed me by the shoulders and he shook me awake. He looked me in the eye and he said, "We are getting off this mountain and we're doing it together." And then he started to lead me down the trail. Every 50 feet that we walked, he would stop, turn around, and he'd look me in the eye and he'd ask me, "Are you okay?" And a couple times I tried to just nod my head like this, but he'd say, no, I need to hear you say it out loud. And I'd say, I'm okay. And I just kept my eyes on his back, and I put my feet where he stepped, and I followed him down that trail. And after a few hours of slowly walking, we made it back to safety. And guys, did you know that is what Jesus does for us? He walks with us in the in-between. When we lock our eyes on him and step where he tells us to step, we make it to safety. So as we head to groups, what is one area of your life where you're in the in-between? And what would it look like for you to fix your eyes on Jesus?